Title: At Sunday dinner, my parents said my sister looked more like a bride and handed her the cap promised to me. I didn't scream. I built a new wedding crown and erased their names. Start. I didn't plan to remember the exact sound the gift box made when my mother slid it across the table. Light, hesitant, like she already knew she was committing a small murder. But I do. I remember everything about that Sunday. The steam from the rice, my father tapping his spoon against his glass, my sister pretending not to glow, and me sitting there with my hands folded, rehearsing calm. The cap was supposed to be mine, the bridal heirloom, passed down the eldest daughter's line for 3 generations. I'd been promised it since I was 12, back when promises from them still felt like anchors, not weapons. She just looks more like a bride, my mother said, not looking at me. More fitting. My sister kept her eyes down, but the tremble in her smile was admission. She'd known. My father added, "You'll understand one day." I understood immediately. I smiled, because rage that arrives too quickly becomes useless. It burns out before it can be shaped. I needed mine shaped. People assume betrayal comes as a surprise. Mine didn't. It arrived like the last puzzle piece. I'd been looking at the picture the wrong way, but the edges were already there. Growing up, I used to believe favoritism was accidental, an unintentional slant toward the prettier, softer, quieter daughter. I believed it even when they pulled her forward in pictures and pushed me into the edges. I believed it when they told me not to show off my grades because she needed the confidence more. I even believed it the night before my engagement party, when my mother said, "Don't upstage your sister. She's sensitive lately." Still, I waited for the day they would see me. The degree, the job, the home I bought without their help. I thought achievement would be loud enough. Turns out, some people only hear their own echo. The betrayal crystallized the moment my sister lifted the lid of the box and peeled back the tissue paper. The cap shimmered, the same one our grandmother wore, the same one I once practiced placing on my head with careful, reverent fingers. Her fingers touched it like it was already hers. My mother's smile quivered, half apology, half expectation. She waited for the explosion. But I'd already turned the flame low. I sat back. I watched. I let the moment etch itself into me, line by line, detail by detail. The shift inside me wasn't loud. It was a click. And then everything became very clear. Revenge requires patience, and patience requires silence. Over the next months, while wedding planning consumed everyone, I built something better than the heirloom cap. I studied metalwork classes in the evenings, forging wire until my fingers blistered. I learned to embed stones, to shape filigree, to weld delicate arcs without warping them. Each burn healed into discipline. I gathered more than materials. I gathered documents, bank statements, property titles, insurance papers. I dug through every drawer in my parents' house the nights they invited my sister for bridal bonding. They forgot I kept a key. What I found wasn't shocking, just confirming. Money my sister received quietly over the years. Bonds assigned to her. Their will, updated the month after I left for college. They hadn't chosen a bride that night at dinner. They had chosen an heir, and they assumed I would accept it. I placed every document into a neat folder labeled simply, "Truth." Then I continued shaping my crown. The execution began at my sister's bridal shower, the one I was invited to with a text sent 2 hours before. I arrived on time, calm, polished. I handed her a wrapped box and watched curiosity override her guilt. She tore the paper quickly. Inside was the heirloom cap, except not the one she expected. This one was a perfect replica. Weight identical. Stones matched. Filigree precise. Only when she touched it did she notice the difference. a thin line of inscription inside the band, etched small but sharp enough to slice. "You can wear the crown they stole. I'll wear the one I built." Her face drained. My mother reached for the piece, hands trembling. "What is this supposed to mean?" "Exactly what it says," I answered softly. I let her hold the replica long enough for her to appreciate the craftsmanship, then long enough to realize it wasn't the original. "Where's the real one?" my father snapped. I smiled. Safe. Fear flickered across their faces, not for the object, but for the control they suddenly felt slipping. I hadn't even begun. The true confrontation came 2 weeks before my wedding, when they arrived uninvited at my home. My father ordered me to return the heirloom. My mother pleaded. My sister stared at the floor. I let them speak until their demands drained into silence. Then I placed the folder labeled "Truth" on the table. "Open it." They flipped through the documents, quietly at first, then with frantic fingers. The financial favoritism, the altered will, notes from their bank manager confirming transfers over the years, a record of their statements about me written by a lawyer I consulted months earlier. My father's face collapsed inward. My mother whispered, You went through everything?" "No," I said. "You did. I just arranged it." My sister finally met my eyes. For the first time, she looked exactly like what she was, someone who only held what she was given. I waited for the apology they'd never practiced. It didn't come. So I delivered the final stroke. "You're all uninvited," I said, "from the wedding, from the marriage, from my life. The heirloom stays with me, not because I want it, but because you do." My mother's breath hitched. "People will ask." "They will," I said, "and I'll answer honestly." The power shifted cleanly, like a blade sliding home. My wedding day arrived without them. I walked alone to the mirror and placed my crown on my head. Silver, structured, bright enough to bend light. Every piece shaped by my hands, not theirs. No lineage, no permission, no names attached but mine. As I stood there, I felt a strange quiet settle in my chest. Not grief, not anger, something colder, stronger, relief. They had given my sister the cap because she looked more like a bride. Maybe she did, but I became something else entirely. A woman who builds her own crown. A woman who erases the names that tried to claim her. And a woman who never, ever needs their table again. As I stood there, I felt a strange quiet settle in my chest. Not grief, not anger, something colder, stronger, relief. They had given my sister the cap because she looked more like a bride. Maybe she did, but I became something else entirely. A woman who builds her own crown. A woman who erases the names that tried to claim her. And a woman who never, ever needs their table again.